Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Afflatus Podcast. So, if you have missed it and you kind of want to know why who I am and why I'm doing this podcast, so my name's Reed, and this podcast essentially is a way for me to improve as a presenter, to gain a lot of skills of just talking in long form, to get some better deductive reasoning, things like that, and also just to talk about things that I'm interested in. So this is going to be a 52 episode, so year-long venture of me just making a podcast every week. Typically, they will come out on a Sunday. This one will actually be coming out, I think, on a Thursday. That's when I'm recording it because I had to miss a week for the second episode because I was on vacation. So in case you missed last week, or if you actually did listen to last week, I wouldn't blame you if you missed it. It took absolutely forever to complete that episode. Well, first of all, I had to read a 600-page book. I had to look up character analysis, theme analysis on the book. I had to listen to this other podcast that I took a bit of inspiration from. And then I had to write the script, which essentially was me writing a paper on this book. So I think that I will not be doing something like that every episode. So in this case, this episode is hopefully going to be a bit shorter. It certainly didn't take me as long to script out, but anyways, I guess one of the problems that I've been facing in terms of this podcast is that a lot of times I do spend far too much time scripting it out. Now, I don't actually just write out what I'm going to say. I just include a lot of bullet points, kind of like you would do for a paper or for a speech outline or things like that. And the problem is that I often kind of just think about what would I say in the speech, and I just go through the entire thing and then I write out sentences. And then obviously when I read them out, I don't just read verbatim, I expand upon these bullet points. But I think that's something that I certainly want to work on. And this one was certainly shorter than the last one. For obvious reasons, I guess. But anyways, back to my reflection on last week. So I will recognize there are certainly a lot of gaps in my argument and in my logic. One of the things I really was disappointed at was the punch a Nazi argument. So the point that I was trying to make there is it's difficult to determine who is a quote-unquote Nazi. You could say Nazis are people who disagree with you, people who are criminals, and then you can punch them and that would be justified, apparently. But that essentially kind of overlooks the fact that punching people is wrong. And that's the point that I was trying to make. Also, who determines what's wrong, and then do we just evolve into everybody punching everybody because everybody is a Nazi to you or to another person, right? And so that was the point that I was trying to make, and I think I really failed on that last week. So I thought I would just talk about that a little bit. I actually had a great conversation with my roommate about utilitarianism and secular utilitarianism. So it's kind of hard to disprove, I guess, or to, kind of disprove without objective morality. And objective morality kind of comes from religion, where you believe there is a set moral code, like saying that murder is wrong is objectively true because there's a God that says that it's objectively true. And I actually intentionally avoided religion last week. I did that for a multitude of reasons. I kind of wanted to keep the audience broad. I didn't want people to think I was just talking about religion the whole time. I couldn't talk about the entirety of the book as I kind of wanted to leave the latter half alone. So what I wanted to do was just try to create a secular argument, but it's definitely a lot harder to argue against utilitarianism without some sort of objective morality. And so what I mean by that is why is human life sacred? Well, you could say human life is sacred because a higher power says that human life is sacred. Or I guess in a secular sense, because the vast majority of humans recognize the sanctity of human life, that makes it sacred. So that's kind of the argument that I was trying to go for there. I will recognize again that I definitely did not make a utilitarianism destroyed in 60 minutes video. It had a lot of gaps in logic, but I had a lot of fun making it. It was a lot of work. I think I will limit those kinds of episodes to once a month, maybe. So don't expect that kind of stuff every week. It did definitely take a lot out of me. But anyways, I did talk a little bit longer than I would have liked. So let's move on to the topic of today, which is the importance of boredom. Now, when you think about it, everybody hates boredom, or at the very least, everybody says they hate boredom. But I think, and I'll try to defend this, I guess, as this goes, I think that boredom is honestly one of the most important states that we have as humans. And I would say that's second really only to a state of happiness or a state of joy. And why I think that is because boredom is the time where your brain, it wanders and it explores things that you didn't know about yourself, or you can generate new ideas, you can search for interesting questions, or just reflect on your day. And now I hope that sounds kind of awesome. And I think it definitely is. But the caveat is that you have to keep it in moderation. Now, boredom has really fallen by the wayside in the world, with everything from classically books, TikTok, Instagram, Spotify even, all of them fighting to keep our attention during waking or unwaking all hours of the day. Basically, they're trying to get you to click one more TikTok, or they're trying to get you to scroll even a little bit farther or listen to that next podcast or whatever. And it really gets difficult to ignore all of these distractions. And so for your guys' sake, what we're going to do is we're going to have a 40-minute boredom session where I'm just not going to talk, and we're going to start. So we're going to start now. Okay, obviously I'm joking, but it would be a little bit better for you than you would think. And if you don't agree with me, take a look at shower thoughts, for example. So shower thoughts is a popular subreddit. I don't think I've actually ever even gone there. But when you think about shower thoughts as a whole, it's where people come up with these just wacky ideas, or they just have all these stupid, inane thoughts in the early morning or at night. And one of the reasons for that is because you're kind of just sitting there doing nothing. And if you're one of those people that spends like 30 minutes in there, then you're doing nothing for far longer than you should be. But another example would be something like meditation. And meditation it's not the same thing, obviously, as what I'm talking about, where you're just bored, I guess. But what you do in meditation, or at least, kind of the stereotypical version, is, you clear your mind and say, Om, and that's all that you're doing. You're just sitting there for 5 or more minutes, and you're just sitting there completely still, trying to clear your mind. And now I think of this as the same as sitting in a car looking out the window, but without the Om. it's kind of the same thing, but it is slightly different. And I'll just read some effects that I found in a paper called Meditation Process and Effects by Hari Sharma. Probably desperately butchered that, but so some of the benefits of meditation that they found were, and this is a lot, stress reduction, decreased anxiety, decreased depression, reduction in pain, physical and psychological, improved memory, increased memory efficiency, I guess, and some physiological benefits would be reduced blood pressure, heart rate, breathing pattern, oxygen utilization, carbon dioxide elimination, increased melatonin, relative blood flow to the brain, and like a million others. I cut out at least half of the ones that they talked about in this paper. And this isn't just one study. This was it was a summary paper, which means that it just finds all this research and collates it into one place. So I didn't have to actually read like 30 papers for the same thing. And keep in mind that a lot of these effects could simply be placebo. But at the end of the day, I guess it doesn't really even matter, because even if you just think that you're going to reduce your stress, the fact that it does reduce your stress is what's important. And so I guess I don't actually meditate, but whenever I need ideas, I turn off my music, I throw away my phone, I just throw it in the garbage. It gets a little bit expensive, but then after that, I just think. And, obviously, I don't have to convince you guys. I mean, you're watching this podcast right now, so I'm sure you're bored out of your mind. You should be thanking me. But anyways, so while boredom and meditation are obviously not the same thing, again, kind of like I said earlier, the important part is clearing your mind. And to me, I think the most important aspect of boredom in general is generating ideas. So, for example, every idea that I've come up so far on this podcast, and probably 90% of the rest of the episodes, were thought up either in the shower, sitting here at my desk, just zoning out, or right before I was going to sleep. And what those times all have in common is that there were really no distractions. I was just sitting there, trying to go to sleep. I didn't have any music in. I wasn't listening to anything. I was just sitting there thinking. I was in the shower where I wasn't playing any music. I was just listening to the sound of the shower, I guess, those nice nature sounds. Or I was just sitting at my desk, probably listening to a class, an online class, and just zoning out. I guess the best example that I have for how boredom can help you develop ideas was when I did a class called Comedy College. So I did this last year, and essentially what it was a stand-up comedy class. So we went into class and we learned from someone who actually has done professional stand-up comedy before. And he would talk about the types of jokes, kind of the structure of them. And while maybe you're laughing right now, hey, that's the Comedy College magic at work right there. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you think it's ridiculous to actually, quantify what jokes are, but it actually kind of does help, because it kind of ruins comedy in a way, I would say, but it also kind of helps you determine what makes a good joke. And so I guess the culmination of this class was we had to do a 10-minute stand-up show at the end of the semester. And for me, it was probably one of the most terrifying and simultaneously one of the most rewarding experiences of my entire life. And I guess I don't really consider myself naturally funny. I'm sure you can kind of tell that by some of my quote-unquote jokes that I have during these. But I especially think that I'm not really very funny in kind of pre-prepared ways. I think I can be funny if you're talking to me or we're just having a conversation. You can add a little pizzazz in there, but for me, I really, really struggled in the beginning. All my ideas were just stupid. They, maybe they had a little bit of funny in it, but then it would just go on too long. And I was struggling, and I felt that everybody else was funnier than I was. But then, kind of about halfway through the semester, I finally started generating some good ideas. And I started generating these good ideas when I was walking home from school mainly, or when I was in the shower, or again, right before I was going to bed. Anytime that I was just kind of had my brain off, I would just start generating ideas. Probably only 10% of them were actually any good, but the important part is that I was generating ideas. And I would take out my trusty little journal and I'd write them down. If they were good or bad, it didn't really matter because I could simply just write down, and if they weren't good, then I wouldn't use them. Maybe I'd use them later. And what I actually found during this was trying to force these ideas, sitting down at my desk and saying, all right, jokes. That would probably be when I would write my absolute worst jokes ever. I would probably write them, and then I would finish and I would just say, this is the stupidest thing I've ever written. And the most natural, probably my favorite joke, I wrote in probably 15 minutes. I went into the library. We were supposed to do like a media joke where it was some headline or whatever that you saw. So I went into the basement of our library where they have like the local newspapers. I opened it up to a random page. I saw a picture of people bull riding. I went, okay, that's my idea. I closed it, went back home, and I wrote a whole 4-minute joke in 15 minutes. And it was probably my favorite joke of that entire class. And so that for me, I didn't sit down to write this, but I felt inspired and I just let my mind wander and write. And again, I think that turned out perfectly. But whenever I would expressly sit down to write a joke, man, it would just not work. And so again, I think the biggest thing to point out is the reason why these times worked better for me to brainstorm was because I just didn't really have distractions. And when you don't have distractions, your mind can wander to wherever it wants to go. And so again, I would say if you ever want to generate some good ideas, you can just zone out without distractions. And not all the time, but a lot of times ideas will kind of just flow like water, like it did for me when I was writing that joke. Other times, maybe you'll think of something just completely random, right? When I was a little kid, I would sometimes think, why does the sun, or why does the sun always only come up at night? Why does the moon only come up at night? And things like that. And then I would either ask my dad or look it up, and I was that much smarter every day. Or even some other times, maybe you'll think about a failure of yours, or, sometimes even a good memory or something. And, at those moments, maybe you didn't generate ideas, but you had a moment of introspection. And I think introspection is something we kind of don't really get enough of these days, where we just take a look at ourselves and determine, even if you are thinking about a failure, if it's something bad, it doesn't really matter, because at least you're thinking about where to go ahead from there. And so for this last section, again, it's going to be a little bit shorter than usual. This last section, we're going to talk about how. So how do we fit boredom into our busy schedules? Because I'm sure you're busy. I'm sure I'm busy. And unfortunately, if you say you try to do meditation every day, most of us probably aren't gonna get that habit started. So how do we fit this kind of stuff into our busy schedules? And so I'll give you two options, and those would be what I'll call the nuclear way, and the other way I'll call the casual. So nuclear would be, going all out. And what I would suggest for this would be to find your biggest time waster. It could be TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. For me, typically YouTube. And what you do is you just throw it away. Or you can just use app timers. And you'd be amazed what you can get done. I think I did talk about this in the first episode, but you'll be amazed what you can get done when you just take your biggest distractor and just make it so you can't use it. But once you do limit your time on that, or just completely turn it off. For example, just today I stopped going on YouTube for a week just to kind of get other stuff done. But when the next time that you're scrolling through your phone and you're looking for something to do, you're opening up Instagram, seeing there's nothing new, exiting out, going into Spotify or whatever and seeing there's nothing new, and then you're just sitting there for like 5-10 minutes swiping and doing nothing. Just put your phone down and just accept the boredom. Because all you're doing in that moment where you're scrolling through your phone is you're just desperately trying to avoid that boredom. And the other method that I'll suggest for you is the casual method. And so this is the method I would say I probably do far more often. And essentially, when you start zoning out and it's not important, something like online college. Hey, am I right, ladies? Yeah, no ladies listen to this, but either way, something like, as bad as it sounds, maybe you're listening to a class that doesn't really matter, or you're on the bus, in the shower. Again, before you go to sleep, I think that's a great time. Or, something like when you're cooking. Obviously, when you're cooking, be careful. Don't just completely zone out. But when you're zoning out, don't fight it. Again, the reason that we fight it is because we just have this natural aversion to being bored. But don't fight it. Just let your mind be free and think. And if you want some suggestions for what to think about, I don't know, just think of new hobbies to try. What do you want to have for dinner? Or think about some project that you need ideas for. And again, just don't force it, because if you force it, it'll have the opposite effects where you, for one, probably won't come up with any ideas, or if you do, most of them will be pretty bad. And I think the most important step in all of this is to write it down. Like, think about how many ideas you've had that have just been completely lost by saying, I'll remember this later. It's countless, for me at the very least. And I know that a lot of times it can really suck, especially if you're trying to sleep. It can suck to, get up and have to go write it down or something. But this is the most important step, because it doesn't, introspection is good and all, but if you're actually trying to generate ideas, then you need to write it down, otherwise it will get lost. And some suggestions that I can have for this are using just a regular old notepad, using your phone. I know a lot of phones have notepads. For me, I just simply text myself. I know I probably should just install a notepad app, but whatever. I'll just continue to text myself. And this way you can really generate ideas, or again, you can just simply think and give yourself time for introspection that we kind of miss out on. And Also, you just get some time to relax with your own thoughts. In a busy world, it really is too easy to forget who you are and what you want to be. And boredom can be a catalyst to finding your ideal self, who you want to be. And again, that's the first step to self-improvement as a whole. So I hope that I've sold it to you at least a little bit. And obviously everybody gets bored at least once in a while. But rushing to fight that boredom, a lot of times we can miss out on this golden opportunity of introspection and brainstorming. So I highly encourage you sometime to just sit back and let your mind wander. So thank you so much for watching. I will try to have another episode up this Sunday, although I guess I haven't really decided on a topic yet, so we'll get that figured out. But anyways, thanks again so much for watching, and take care.